I never thought my marriage would end over a single text message. But when I saw his phone light up at 2 a.m., my heart sank. "I miss you, can't wait to see you again." My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. It wasn't my number. And the worst part? My husband was lying right beside me, fast asleep, completely unaware that I had just uncovered his biggest secret. I'm Emily, 32 years old, and I thought I had a perfect life. My husband, Jake, and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. He was my best friend, my rock, the man I built my future around. We had a beautiful home, stable jobs, and a routine that felt safe, predictable. Maybe too predictable. Jake had always been dependable, the kind of man who never forgot an anniversary, always kissed me goodbye in the morning, and checked in during the day just to say, "Hope you're having a good day, babe." I used to brag about how lucky I was, how our marriage was built on trust and communication. But looking back, I realize now that I only saw what I wanted to see. The past few months had been different. Jake started coming home later than usual, blamming work. His phone, once casually left on the counter, was now always in his pocket, always on silent. When I asked what was going on, he would just smile and say, "You're overthinking again, Em, you always do this." And I believed him because I wanted to. I didn't think much of the little changes at first. The extra gym sessions, the sudden interest in dressing better, even the way he'd roll to his side of the bed right after sex instead of holding me like he used to. I told myself it was normal. People change, marriages go through phases. But that night, that text, it shattered the illusion I had been clinging to. As I stared at his phone, my mind raced. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Had he ever loved me at all, or had I just been convenient? A part of me wanted to wake him up, demand the truth right then and there. But another part, the part that still loved him, that feared what would happen next, couldn't move. Instead, I sat in bed, wide awake, watching the man I thought I knew sleep peacefully beside me. My stomach churned as I realized this wasn't just a mistake. This was a choice he had made, over and over again. And now, I had to decide, what was I going to do about it? I didn't sleep at all that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like my whole world had tilted off its axis. My husband, the man who swore he loved me, who held me when I cried, who made me promises of forever, was lying to me. And not just a little lie. This was something else, something bigger. By the time the sun started creeping through the curtains, I had made up my mind. I needed proof. I waited until Jake got up for work, watching him closely as he moved around the room. He stretched, yawned, and grabbed his phone like it was second nature. I half expected him to glance at me with guilt, to hesitate before unlocking it. But no, he was calm, collected. He kissed my forehead and said, "Busy day today, I'll try not to be too late." Try not to be too late. That phrase sent a chill down my spine. Where was he really going? And more importantly, who was he going to see? The moment he left, I grabbed my laptop and started digging. I had never been the jealous type, never felt the need to check up on Jake. But now, all the little red flags I had ignored over the past few months came rushing back. The sudden interest in privacy. The extra gym sessions. The way he always had an excuse when I suggested date night. His new cologne, when I hadn't bought for him. I logged into our phone bill account and scanned the call logs. One number showed up again and again, sometimes late at night, sometimes in the middle of the workday. My chest tightened. My hands trembled as I copied the number into my phone and stared at it. I wasn't ready to call, not yet. Instead, I texted my best friend Sarah. "Something's wrong, I think Jake is cheating." She called me immediately. What happened? I told her everything. The late nights, the weird behavior, the text message. She was silent for a moment before saying, "Em, you need to find out for sure. No assumptions. If he's cheating, you deserve to know the whole truth." And she was right. I needed more than suspicions. That night, I decided to test him. Over dinner, I acted normal, smiling, laughing, even pretending to be interested in his boring office stories. But the whole time I was watching, studying. When his phone vibrated on the table, I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. It was quick, but it was there. He flipped it over instantly, forcing a casual smile. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Just work," he said too quickly. At 9 p.m. He shrugged. Deadlines, you know how it is. I nodded, but I knew. Later that night, when he fell asleep, I picked up his phone. My heart pounded as I entered his passcode, his old one. Incorrect password. That's when it hit me. Jake had changed his passcode, and he hadn't told me. I sat there in the dark, gripping his phone, realization settling like a heavy stone in my chest. He was hiding something, and whatever it was about to destroy everything. The next few days felt like torture. Every conversation with Jake was a test, every glance a puzzle I was desperate to solve. I could barely look at him without wondering whose hands had been on him, whose lips he had kissed. But I wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. I needed more, I needed proof. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. Jake had told me he was working late again. Normally, I would have stayed home, curled up on the couch, waiting for him like the loyal wife I had always been. But not tonight. Tonight, I waited for him to leave, then grabbed my keys and followed his car, staying far enough behind that he wouldn't notice. He didn't go to the office. He didn't even go anywhere that made sense. Instead, he pulled into the parking lot of a dimly lit restaurant on the other side of town. Not a fancy one, not a place we had ever been together. I watched from a distance as he got out, smoothed down his shirt, and checked his reflection in the car window before walking inside. And then my stomach dropped. A woman was already there, sitting in a booth near the window. She was pretty, too pretty. Dark hair, a confident smile, a little too comfortable as she reached for Jake's hand across the table. My throat tightened. My heart pounded so loudly I was afraid someone would hear it. I felt like I was going to be sick. He was holding her hand, smiling, leaning in close. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. This was it, the confirmation I had been dreading. But then I saw something that made my stomach twist even more. She was laughing, running her fingers along his wrist, and then she mouthed something that I could barely make out, but I knew what it was. I missed you. Jake smiled, and then he said something back. Me too. I couldn't breathe. For a moment, I felt completely detached from my body, like I was watching a movie, a terrible, heartbreaking movie where I was the pathetic wife sitting outside in the dark, watching her husband fall in love with someone else. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, snapping a quick picture of them together. I didn't even know why I did it. Maybe I needed something to ground me in reality. Maybe I needed evidence. Maybe I just needed to see it later, when my brain tried to convince me that it wasn't real. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching them, waiting for something to snap me out of it. But nothing did. He didn't glance around nervously. He didn't look over his shoulder, worried about being caught. He wasn't acting like a man making a mistake. He was acting like a man in love. That realization hurt more than anything else. When he finally got up to leave, I stayed frozen in place, gripping my phone so tightly it hurt. I should have left, I should have driven away, but I didn't. Instead, I watched as he walked her to her car, standing close, too close. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run out of my car and demand answers. But I couldn't, because deep down, I already knew the answers. And then, just as he reached for his car door, she grabbed his wrist. He turned, surprised. She smiled up at him. And then she kissed him. Not a quick kiss, not a peck on the cheek. A deep, slow, intimate kiss, one that told me everything I needed to know. I couldn't feel my body anymore. I couldn't process what was happening. All I knew was that my husband had been lying to me for months. And now I had to decide what to do next. I don't remember driving home that night. Everything felt like a blur, like my body was moving on autopilot while my mind shattered into a million pieces. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were still shaking. My chest felt tight, my throat dry. Jake wasn't home yet. Of course he was. I sat in the dark, gripping my phone, staring at the picture I had taken of him with her. Every time I blinked, I saw that kiss replaying in my mind. The way his hands had rested so easily on her waist, the way she leaned into him like they had done it 1,000 times before. I had been so stupid. So blind. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend I never saw anything. Maybe that's why so many women look the other way, because the truth is unbearable. But I wasn't one of those women. I wasn't going to sit here and let my husband humiliate me. By the time Jake walked through the door an hour later, I had made my decision. I was going to confront him, right now. He stepped inside, stretching like he was exhausted. Long day, he sighed, tossing his keys on the counter. You still up? I stared at him from across the room. My blood boiled. He had just kissed another woman, held her, lied to me for months. And now he had the audacity to come home and act like nothing happened. I couldn't take it. Who is she? I asked, my voice cold, controlled. Jake froze, his back stiffened. He turned to look at me, his brows furrowed. What? Don't play dumb, Jake. I held up my phone, the screen glowing with the picture I had taken. I saw you, I saw everything. The color drained from his face. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. For the first time in years, he was the one caught off guard. Emily, he started, stepping toward me. I stepped back. Don't. Silence stretched between us. I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to come up with an excuse, a lie, anything that could get him out of this. But there was no way out. How long? I demanded. How long have you been seeing her? Jake exhaled sharply, rubbing his face. It's not what you think. Don't, my voice cracked, the anger bubbling to the surface. Don't stand there and lie to me. I saw you, Jake, I saw you kiss her. His jaw clenched, his hands dropped to his sides. He wasn't scrambling for excuses anymore, he wasn't even denying it. And that's when I knew. It started a few months ago, he finally admitted, his voice low, almost ashamed. I swallowed hard. Months. That meant every time he told me he was working late, every time he looked me in the eye and said I love you, every time we had been intimate, he had already chosen her. Do you love her? I whispered. Jake hesitated, just for a second, but that second was enough. I felt my heart crack in my chest. Get out, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily's. Get out. He took a deep breath, then nodded, as if he had expected this, as if he had prepared for it. I watched him grab his keys, watched him walk to the door. He hesitated, his hand on the doorknob. I never meant to hurt you, he said softly. I let out a cold, bitter laugh. You didn't just hurt me, Jake, you destroyed us. And with that, he walked out. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, I crumpled to the floor, tears streaming down my face. Jake was gone. And the life I thought we had. That was gone too. The silence in the house was deafening. I sat on the cold hardwood floor, my back pressed against the door, staring blankly at nothing. My whole body felt numb, like my emotions had finally short-circuited from overload. Jake was gone. And yet his presence still lingered, his jacket draped over the chair, his coffee mug in the sink, the faint scent of his cologne clinging to the air. It was cruel, really. A reminder of what had been, of what I thought we were. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay in bed, staring at the empty space beside me, trying to piece together the exact moment when everything fell apart. Was it months ago? Years ago? Had he ever truly been mine, or had I just been the placeholder while he waited for someone else? The next morning, reality came crashing in. My phone buzzed, a message from Sarah. Sarah, did you talk to him? Are you okay? I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. No, I was okay. I was humiliated, betrayed, completely shattered. But what was the point in saying that? Nothing could change what had happened. Instead, I just typed, he's gone. A second later, my phone rang. Emily, Sarah's voice was gentle, cautious. I caught him, Sarah. I saw him with her. He admitted everything. She cursed under her breath. That son of a... I told him to leave. The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth, as if I still hadn't fully processed them. And he did, just like that. Silence, then softly, I'm coming over. Half an hour later, Sarah was sitting on my couch, a bottle of wine in one hand, tissues in the other. Do you want to talk about it? She asked. I laughed bitterly. What's there to say? My husband was cheating on me, and now my marriage is over. She frowned. Emily, your marriage wasn't over because of last night. It was over the moment he chose to lie to you. The moment he decided she was worth risking everything. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. So what now? I whispered. What am I supposed to do? Sarah sighed. First you survive, then you rebuild. That night, I sat alone in my room, scrolling through old pictures of us. The happy ones. The ones where Jake was looking at me like I was his whole world. Had any of it been real? Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. I had cried enough for him. And I wasn't going to waste another tear. Tomorrow I would figure out what came next. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, I was letting him go. The days that followed were a blur of emotions, anger, sadness, regret, but most of all, clarity. For the first time in years, I saw things for what they really were. Jake wasn't just a man who had made a mistake. He was a man who had chosen to betray me, who had looked me in the eyes, told me he loved me, and then gone to her without a second thought. I had spent so long convincing myself that we were solid, that we were different, that nothing could break us. But the truth, we had been breaking for a long time. I had just been too blind to see it. Jake tried to reach out a few times, short texts, as if he still had some right to check in on me. I hope you're okay. I didn't want it to end like this. Can we talk? I never responded. What was there to say? That I missed him, that I still woke up expecting to hear his voice in the morning, that some part of me wanted to believe he regretted it, that he would walk through that door, fall to his knees, and beg for another chance. No. Because even if he did come back, even if he swore it was a mistake, I'd never trust him again. And without trust, what did we have? One night, I sat outside on the porch, watching the sunset, letting the cool air wash over me. I thought about all the things I had lost, my marriage, my security, the future I had planned. But then I thought about what I had gained. Freedom, clarity, strength. For so long, I had tied my happiness to Jake, to us. But I was finally realizing I could be happy on my own. I deserved to be. So I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let this break me. I wasn't going to let him define the rest of my life. I was going to heal, I was going to rebuild. And one day, I was going to look back on this and realize, losing him was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I wasn't losing a love that was real. I was letting go of an illusion. Infidelity shatters trust, but sometimes, losing someone is the best way to find yourself. What would you have done in Emily's situation? Would you have confronted him differently? Let me know in the comments. And if you love shocking, emotional stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next story, it's even crazier. You won't want to miss it.